Hey, everybody. This is episode 3 of
Yes,
the Dead Air I can't even get the name
you're doing a
right yet.
great
We're
job.
so new. We're so fresh.
Yes,
The
it
Dead
is.
Air horror review. There
Yes,
we
the
go.
Dead Air horror review. We're here, and it's episode 3. We've made it to what many consider the most important episode in any show or podcast, the third episode. We all remember the third episode of The Simpsons, the third episode of Seinfeld, the third episode of Game of Thrones. Like I said, many people would say the most important, episode. I almost said the titular episode.
Titular.
So,
Ooh. And
uh,
you said it
and that's
correctly.
completely
Correctly.
well, no, titular is completely incorrect. So
You
yeah, it's gonna
pronounced
be.
it correctly.
I pronounced it great,
Yeah.
but yeah, it
You
is
sounded smart.
in context, it is completely wrong. So it's gonna be a hell of a show. I just woke up from like a very long nap that I didn't expect to take, so it's gonna be interesting.
Oh, so you should
So
be fresh as a daisy, my friend.
yeah, so I guess we're here to talk about Alexandre Aja's High Tension.
Did we get that right this time? Because the past 2 episodes we've done, we've
Mhm.
completely butchered the director's name.
Oh, I'm just gonna put this out on Front Street. If you're offended by someone saying somebody's name wrong, then this is the wrong show. Because I do it so much, like people think I do it intentionally, and I really don't. I'm just dumb and I can't read. Uh, these are movie podcasts, folks, not book podcasts. So, you know, I don't know what to
It's
tell
not a
you.
slight towards the director. It's just
Oh,
that,
oh, 1,000%,
yeah.
absolutely not. I'm a big fan, but we'll get into that. So yeah, let's get into it, I guess. All right, and we're back. So yeah, Chris, what is your history with this film? I feel like I told you to watch
You
this
did.
movie. First of all, I just want to say, we talked about this briefly, a little inside baseball right before the mics went hot. I, I mean, we're both the same age, and I for one have having a very hard time dealing with how old I am, and I have a hard time gauging this fact where this movie to me feels like it's maybe 10 years old. Um, then I looked at the date when it came out, and it came out in 2003. So this movie is 20 years old to the day. Um, that blows my fucking mind that this movie is 20 years old. But Chris, I feel like I told you to watch this movie way back in the day.
You did. You told me to
Yeah,
watch this, and there was another banger you told me about it around the same time.
yeah.
Um,
I have been tooting the horn of this movie for
you
a
love this
very
movie.
long time. Yeah, I
And when you
have,
originally told me, I was like, high tension? Like, that just sounds
and I
so
think I
bad.
gave you a really terrible like bootleg, like a bootleg DVD of this with, it
Mhm.
has the original French title on it, which is Hoite Tension, or however you say
Hot.
that.
Yeah.
Hot, yeah,
Haute
hot
tension.
tension. And yeah, so yeah, I wanted to say that I was like, I'm pretty sure that I gave this to Chris
You definitely turned me
originally.
on to this
Yeah,
movie. And
yeah,
I was
this
going to
was.
say the other one around the same time. And I remember these as a pair,
Mhm.
for whatever reason that you introduced me to. And they're two of my, I wouldn't say my favorite horror movies, but they're in the
Sure.
top tier, which is this and Hard Candy.
Oh my God, Hard Candy. That's a movie I'd love to. We should do that on the
We
show
will do
because
that one.
I'd
Yeah.
love to revisit that film. I haven't watched that in years. But
Patrick
yeah,
Wilson, who starred
Patrick
in that
Wilson's
movie,
great.
lives in my town.
No shit.
Yeah.
That's awesome. He is pretty good in some things.
Yeah. I like Patrick Wilson a lot.
He's really good in Hard Candy. He's really good in Fargo season 2. I thought he was great in that. But anyway, yeah, like High Tension, man, like this movie kicked off what people called the French extremist wave, which was this period in the early 2000s where all these French horror movies came out that were like crazy violent, and it was kind of like a I don't know, almost like a renaissance of like the horror at the time. On my other podcast, we've watched a lot of what we've dubbed the new metal horror movies, and I Chris, I'm sure you'll remember these awful days. But in the late 90s, early 2000s, every horror movie was like, it was like Dracula 2000, and like everything was like this cheesy, like everything was kind of trying to be Scream,
Yeah,
and like everything was just weirdly bloodless and full of new metal songs and just
yeah.
edited weird, filled with again, everything was trying to be I Know What You Did Last Summer, everything was trying to be Scream, and it was just really weird. And then I as a horror fan, I hated it. I just couldn't, like, I
Did
like
you
the
feel as
originals
jaded as I did, or
back
maybe
then.
back
Oh,
then,
probably.
or
Oh yeah.
desensitized to it? Because it seemed like a lot of people knew horror fans or people that just came to the genre around the time of Scream.
Yeah.
It was a lot of jump scares, but it wasn't much blood. Uh,
No, they got away from, again, they turned everything into this they got away from, and not that you have to be gory to be a horror movie, but like they completely
helps.
they took it all away, and everything was about like cheesy suspense and like jump scares, and like there was nothing like visceral about any of those movies. They took away like a lot of like, I mean, we talked about Halloween last episode, but like, like the original Halloween is like visceral and disgusting and scary because it feels so real. And like, I guess that's the thing that I hated about that era of movies, is all like fast editing and loud music, and there was no like realism. And one
It
thing
was
I
the
will say,
TikTok of horror films.
well, yeah, it really was. And one thing I will say that High Tension does incredibly well is, well, one, it's hyper violent. Like, it
Yeah,
is insanely violent.
I mean,
But like
right out of
the
the gate, you're
oh
getting
yeah.
some like really extreme graphic. Uh,
And
it's not even violent per se. Well, there's
it's
perceived violence
it's
at the
pretty
beginning. It's like,
violent.
whoa, it's alarming,
Yeah.
and you got
Yeah.
to make sure the kids aren't around, or your
Oh yeah.
parents,
No.
or anyone who might be mildly offended by
And yeah.
violence or
And I think like the image behind me, I think it is something like, it's all practical, like, and it's all like the it's gross, sticky, like the
Can you just
black
slide
blood.
to the side just a little bit, just so we can take a look? Okay. Yeah, there we go.
It's
Now,
it's like the it's like it's like
for our viewers, you can see exactly what we're talking
yeah.
about. But for our listeners, there's two bloodied women
Yeah.
um, in the process, and they're about to kiss. They're about
Well,
to.
it's the last scene in the film, once the twist happens. And also, I was debating this before the show, but it's impossible to talk about this movie without talking about the twist. So, and the movie's 20 years old, so
We're all about spoilers.
we are going to talk about spoilers. But the main character, the thick black blood on her face, it's just so gross and awesome and tactile. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, it just, you can feel it. But I love this movie. I actually don't really care for all like the rest of the French New Wave horror stuff, like Inside, and this one's gonna make me real unpopular with a lot of people. I don't like Martyrs. People love that fucking movie. I think that movie is interesting for like the first half, and then it turns into this other movie, and I don't like it. I think the ending is kind of it, like where it goes is kind of interesting, but overall that movie is not very good. But people love it. It's one of my hottest takes. Like, people love that fucking movie. But I think I thought so highly, no pun intended, of High Tension. I legit thought that Alexandre Aja, the director, I thought he was going to be like the next big thing. Like, I thought he was, I just thought he was going to be like incredible. And unfortunately, he still works. He's still around. But he's never made anything to the level of this afterwards. I mean, he made a movie that I kind of like. He wrote it, he didn't direct it, called P3, which is like a like a kind of like a slasher type movie in a parking garage, which I thought was kind of interesting. He made Piranha 3D. He made that movie with the alligator that came out like a couple of years ago, Crawl.
Yeah.
He made a movie called Pieces that like could have been good and it didn't really work out. I think it was called Pieces. I don't know, Kiefer Sutherland in it. Anyway, um, so one thing I wanted to say about this movie, because again, like the reason that I brought this movie up for the show this week is one, I feel like it's kind of slept on. Like I don't hear people talking about this movie enough. But again, like I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's 20 years old. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's not, it's just hard for me to remember, like, people have biases against old stuff, and this is an old movie now, which is wild to
But you're
say.
right. It doesn't, to me, watching it again, it doesn't feel old.
It doesn't feel dated at all. No, I watched it this week as well. And but one thing I wanted to say about it, that I think that this movie is criminally misunderstood. And I use this quote a lot from my mom because I think it's funny. But she describes a lot of the movies that I watch as, and I quote, movies you have to pay attention to, which I think is great. But I think a lot of people, specifically, I think a lot of people didn't like this movie because they didn't like the twist and they felt like it was kind of cheap. And the twist is that the main lady protagonist, who is running away from the killer throughout the first half of the movie, it's revealed that she's actually the killer. And I think that not only does this add so much more to the film, well, I think it adds so much, but the movie also telegraphs this immediately. And I think this is something that people didn't pick up on, don't understand, still don't understand, because when I bring this up, whenever I see this movie brought up, people are like, oh, I never thought of that. The first shot of this movie is her, I can't remember anybody's name, I never can in these movies, but the main character, she's literally like, she's in a psych ward or something, and a camera comes on. This is to signify that everything you're about to watch is from her perspective. So she's already an unreliable narrator from the jump. And I think what's interesting is that this killer, like everything, like the first time you see this killer, he's literally he's giving himself a blowjob from a head that he's cut off. So this
That
this
was the
is
scene I was talking about. That was
yeah.
alarming. It was
This
like, whoa, that really talk about setting the tone.
Yeah, but I think it's brilliant, right? Because it illustrates right from the jump, like this guy, this killer is representing this overwhelming like sexual violence and repression, and that's what this character is. Because another B plot of this movie is kind of like, the two main characters are lesbians, and one is certainly more in love with the other. The other one is talking about how like she's got boyfriends and she's kind of promiscuous, and again, it's never overt, but it's clear that the blonde, the short-haired blonde woman
Marie.
is Marie, that she's in love with her, like you can tell. And then so the whole movie is her creating this, who knows what really happened, right? But like she's created this scenario where she's the heroine and she's trying to save the other girl from this murderer, but the murderer was her the whole time. I think that adds so much to the movie because
Yeah.
it's about sexual repression and being like kind of deranged, and then by the end of the movie, like the screenshot behind my head, like I think like by the end it just adds such a punch because then you kind of recontextualize everything that you've seen, and it's like, oh, like she couldn't, the reason that you learn that she's the killer is because she can't even keep up with her own story, like she can't, or um she can't lie to herself anymore that this is actually happening. I personally think that's pretty brilliant. And as far as like a simple movie goes, because this is a very A to B movie. This is a very like streamlined, fast movie. Two girls, they go to this house, the whatever, what was the
Alex.
Alex,
Alex is
thank you. So Marie and Alex, They go to Alex's house out in the country. They're having a good time. It's like a little holiday for them. Fucking crazy fucking killer shows up, kills all of Alex's family, and then systematically tries to track down, or actually does capture Alex, and then Marie has to like try to rescue her back. And that's your movie. That's it. That's the whole fucking movie. And I mean, on the paper, then that's like really shallow, but like to add the little twist that they did, I think it adds so much more to a pretty simple story. And I think it's brilliant. And I think it's interesting because like so many people I've seen are like, well, the twist is cheap. And I can't disagree more. I think like it is the movie, right? Like it adds so much depth to just the random stalker killer character, because he's not, it's not that, it's more than that. And I think that's kind of brilliant. Also, the killer is we want to talk about another extreme French film. I believe the killer's real name is, the actor is named Philip Noel or Philip Nolan.
Yeah, something like that.
He is the main character in Gaspar Noé's.
Nahon.
What
Nahon.
is it? What's his last name?
Nahon?
Nahan. I was close.
Or Nahon?
He is the main character in Gaspar Noé's I Stand Alone, which I don't have we don't have the time on the show to talk about how fucked up that movie is, but it is very interesting to see him, and it's almost like he walked out of that movie into this, like it would fit his character perfectly. He also has a brief cameo in Irreversible, but that's the only two things I've ever seen.
Oh, really? He's in Irreversible too?
He's in the very opening scene. He's in a room smoking, and I believe there's a drop line that indicates he's the same character. I think I want to say I haven't watched Irreversible in a little bit, but I think he's talking about the situation in I Stand Alone. I think he mentioned something about his daughter. And I think he's the same character in both. So it's like the Noah universe. But he has that great line that summarizes the whole point of Irreversible, which is time destroys all things. And that's him. He says that. And then the movie kind of starts. So yeah, but he's great, and he's like fucking terrifying in this movie. And I really like in this movie a lot. And again, like it speaks to what I was talking about earlier about him being more of like an archetype, and again he's representing more things. You never really see his face the way it's shot. He's got this hat on, so he's always kind of obscured, so that again like is a subtle hint that like he's not really there, you know what I mean? I think like, it's one of those things where you never show somebody's eyes to like identify their humanity, and like you never really see his face. It's always kind of obscured.
You do,
And he's
like, once I believe once they get to the gas station.
But that's also when they reveal that he's not the killer. That's when the cops are like looking at the security camera and they see her.
Yeah.
So like I think that counts. Also, towards the end when they have the showdown, like it's just, I don't know. This movie does such a good job with like the cat and mouse stuff between Marie and the killer. Like when he's tracking her down, and she sets that flashlight up,
Yeah.
and he's looking at it,
yeah,
and then she comes and like whacks him with this fucking 2x4, and it's just disgusting and violent. Yeah. And then of course my favorite part of the fucking movie is when he breaks out this giant saw,
that like huge circular saw or whatever.
I'm proud to tell you that I know exactly what that saw is used for. That is a concrete saw.
Yeah,
you use that to cut into concrete or asphalt,
or the people you love.
It has a hilarious name. It has a hilarious name of a cut saw, which seems kind of crazy to me. But there's that scene where there's just some motorist like passing by, and he cuts into him, and because Alex is in the back of that car, and it's just blood everywhere.
Oh, that poor guy.
It cuts to her. It cuts to her.
Wrong place, wrong time.
It cuts to Alex's face, and it's literally just like visceral shower.
It cut back and forth at least 3 or 4 times between.
It's so good
between Alex's face and the guy getting chopped up.
And then that's also when you kind of start getting things more from Alex's perspective, and that's when you see Marie with the cut saw, and she's like talking about how she loves her and all this stuff, and Alex is like, no, you killed them all, you killed them all. And it's so good. And like, the actress that plays Marie is just so fucking like, she she's so good at like at exuding this, like, again, there's this like tenderness underneath of what she's saying. Like, I guess like
I think
her
she
character,
truly loved her. I mean,
right, her character is lying, but like she
yeah,
doesn't know she's lying. And I don't know how to describe that any better, but like she does such an amazing job at like, she looks absolutely fucking terrifying, and but like it's not over the top. And like I feel like a lesser actor would have made it more like arch, like more like kind of
yeah.
campy. And like her performance just feels so genuine, and it really sells, it really sells the whole movie, honestly, because the ending of this movie is the movie, because that's when everything comes together and you're like, oh
I'm
fuck.
glad you brought that up. There is nothing that feels campy about this movie. In fact, this is all practical effects,
Yeah,
for all intents and purposes, and is done really, really well. So if you're a fan of practical effects, like this is
yeah.
a good movie to
the
watch.
the only little problem I have with this whole movie is the fucking, when he kills the dad with the bookcase. And like, it's just, I don't know, there's something about like he takes his head like clean off. And like
Yeah,
I appreciate what they were trying to do, but it would kind of work better is if his neck just broke like really gross and his head didn't just like pop off. It looks kind of goofy.
yeah.
But also this movie gets like major credit because um in most movies the little kid, because Alex has, I believe it's her little brother, and I mean it is like a small child, that
Probably,
kid,
probably seven at most.
probably seven, that
7 years
kid
old
is
at most.
murdered. Like
In the cornfield. Poor
that kid
kid.
is
He didn't stand a
straight
chance.
up murdered.
Yeah.
Also the scene where the mother gets killed is fantastic. Like, Marie is witnessing this from like the closet, and the mother sees her, and the killer comes up and slices her throat. And again, it's just like, it's just visceral and disgusting. And I think you hear like the sound of her breath escaping from the neck slash. It's just like, Jesus Christ.
The
Like,
from a technical standpoint, the sound mixing
oh, it's
on this
great.
movie is impeccable too, because you can hear it, to what you were saying, the uh, uh like the breathing. What
Mhm.
got me was hearing the killer,
Oh yeah.
his breathing, and like him swiping the razor blade against his leg every time he made a kill. It was like
Oh yeah.
everything was so sharp, and it was just like you could you could hear a pin drop.
Yeah, and I think too, like, something that I really appreciate about this movie is, um, and another great Alexandre Aja movie, and I totally forgot about, is he made the Hills Have Eyes remake, which I think is
Oh,
actually
really?
superior. Yeah, I think that movie is superior to the original Hills Have Eyes. He made that like kind of right after this. That was
That's a
like
great movie. I didn't
it's
know
like
he
it
did that one too.
but that movie and this movie does the same thing, where I feel like, in horror movies, and it's like a trope, right? That everyone makes like the dumbest decision, right? Like everybody, like there's that great, I think it's like a Geico commercial where they're like, let's get it, let's just get in the moving car and get away from
Oh
the
yeah.
murderer. And they're like, no, let's go hide out in that room full of chainsaws. And they're like, yeah. But like this movie doesn't do that. Like they all make, like everyone, including the murderer, make rational decision, like as rational a decision as you can for the situations that they're in. But nobody does anything like incredibly stupid just for
Yeah,
the
even
sake
the
of the
7 year old
plot.
was like smart enough to know I need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, and
He,
it's
he
just,
ran for the hills. I mean, he didn't make it, but
yeah. Oh, and I forgot to mention, to go back to the sexual repression allegory. The killer literally shows up as Marie is masturbating. So again, like the metaphor is like right there. Like it's not even, you know what I mean? Like after she's done masturbating, the killer shows up. So it's like it's right there. Again, it's interesting to me that people, like, it went over people's heads.
now the first time you saw it, did
Mm-hmm.
did you have a feeling that that twist was coming, or was it a complete surprise?
Oh no, 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 no. It's only upon the, like, I like the twist. but I didn't pick up on the subtleties of like all the stuff that I'm talking about. It took a second viewing, and then I was like, oh shit. Because
Yeah,
like again, like all the killer's stuff is like one sexual and very like again, everything you see with him is like sexual violence and it's against women, and it's like it's there. You know what I mean? I knew that there was something between Marie and Alex. Again, that's on Front Street. And then by the end of the movie, I was like, oh, okay. Like I didn't hate I still kind of got what the movie was going for, but I didn't get it to the level that I got it after like a second viewing, if that makes any sense.
but
Like
let me ask you a
the
question.
twist still worked for me. Yeah.
Um, the van.
Yeah.
Now, did Marie go out and grab
See,
the van and drive it back to the
see
house?
that see that's the thing where, and this is a little bit of
The
a
van.
cop
No,
out.
this is the van that
Yeah,
killer,
the killer's
the
van.
killer was driving.
So this is a little bit of where this is a bit of a cop out answer, and I'll cop to that. But this is where it's a unreliable narrator. So this is one of those situations where you don't there maybe wasn't a van. Again, like we're not sure
Yeah,
as viewers like how much is obviously like she's lying about so many things. Like, again, I talked about the scene where the mother gets killed and the mother sees her in the closet. Well, obviously, like she wasn't in the closet, she
yeah.
was there. So how much how much was actually there and how much is made up, it's kind of up in the air. And yeah, a lot of people will be like, well, that's kind of bullshit. But I mean, that's what you get with like, a unreliable narrator story, that she's made up big chunks of this story to justify it to herself. So who knows if, what I mean, there was a van, or what I mean, like the like exact pieces fit sometimes, but like overall, that's the only like big gaping, like that
Yeah.
doesn't really check out one to one. But I also think I think you can kind of write that off as well.
The first time I watched it, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
On second viewing earlier today, it had me thinking more, but then I realized it doesn't really matter
Yeah.
how it fits into the story at all because it doesn't really make a difference. She was deranged. She was crazy. She
Yeah,
was delusional.
exactly. And like, maybe she already had a van there parked or something. What I mean? There's
Yeah.
plenty of things. And again, maybe there was never even a van. Because think about it, really, the van and all the subsequent things that happen with the van, they all paint her, Marie, in a more heroic light. Like without that van, like she doesn't get to play hero and do all that. So who knows if that part's even real? You know what I mean? That all could be, because if you think about it, you know, that's all the van. Once the van comes into play, that's really when the cat and mouse between Marie and the killer starts. So you got to figure all of that is fake. You know what I mean? None of that happened at all. So, Marie, we know that Marie kills the person in the convenience store, but beyond that, that's it. You know what I mean? So I don't
Yeah.
know. I think you can write that one off, but that's just me.
So we don't have that much time left, but
Yeah.
where would you rank this in your list of favorite horror films?
Man,
Because I
that's a
know you
great.
like this one a lot,
I love it. That's a great question.
and you don't have to place, you don't have to name
Sure.
any other movies, but would you say you would
I
rank
would
like
I
top
would li-
10?
I would definitely it might even be top 5. I
Wow,
mean, I really love this movie, and I've loved this movie for
that's saying a lot
years.
for you too.
Yeah, I this movie made a big impact on me. Like I love this movie a lot. And so yeah, I would say it's I would say I'd probably put it in top 5. I mean, if I had to stop and think about it. But yeah, probably top 5 for me. I like I said, I had this movie made a big impact on me. I've watched it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And again, like I always like being, one thing about me, whether it's music or movies, like I always like finding stuff that like maybe nobody's seen, and then seeing it and then like sharing it with people. Like I I'm not like this kind of
You're
person that
what
wants
they
to
call a
like,
tastemaker.
yeah, I guess, but I don't. But I'm not the kind of
You
person that's
are.
like,
Yeah.
this is mine, and I needed to hold it for myself. Like if I find something I love, I wanted everybody to get in and be like, man, this movie's fucking great. Like so many people I turn this movie onto, and they're like, man, I'm so glad I watched that. Like I would have never seen it. Like they might be a little like, oh, the fucking violence is like something else, but yeah, I think that the thing is like, you don't get stuff like, even now, like you don't get stuff like this. This is a very unique film, and I don't know, I'm a huge fan because I think it's got everything, right? It's got the gore, it's got great acting, it's got great production, it's quick. I mean, this movie is like right at an hour and a half, which is perfect.
And they were
Like,
right on the nose with the title too. I mean, high
yeah,
tension. I don't
I'm
know
glad I'm glad you
if they were
brought that
finding
up.
difficulty naming it anything else, but I mean,
I
it very accurately
in
named what
some
this film is.
I'm really glad you brought the title up because in some parts, I believe in England, they released this movie as Switchblade Romance, which I fucking love that title. Like it's like I like high tension, but like Switchblade Romance is kind of badass.
Sounds like an 80s metal band.
Yeah, it totally does. I don't know why they couldn't call it high tension there, but anyway.
It doesn't make any sense.
So, any closing thoughts for you, Chris? Since we got 2 minutes to go.
I mean, I I love this movie too. I would say it's in my top five.
Yeah.
Like you, I am further carrying on the tradition of passing this along to other people.
Oh,
I just told my
absolutely.
barber last
Hell
week
yeah.
about this movie before we even discussed making a
Oh, cool.
podcast about it, and I just love it so much. I love everything about it. I this is one of these horror films that I could rewatch time and time again and not get tired of ever.
Yeah, and it's available digitally pretty much. Like Tubi has it and a couple of the other
Plex. I
streaming.
saw it on
Okay.
Plex.
Well, that's mine. But oh, they have it on like
Yeah, I think
their
they had
own
it for
movies.
free.
Okay, that's cool. But Scream Factory, Vinegar Syndrome, some of those boutique Blu-ray houses put a new Blu-ray of this out. I have a Blu-ray of this, and it is a trash transfer. Like we need a nice, crisp 4K transfer of this.
I'm
Like
sorry, but I think those days are over, TJ.
no, like the fucking Scream Factory and those companies I just mentioned, like they still put out stuff
People are still
all.
using Blu-rays and DVDs.
Uh, oh yeah, well not DVDs but Blu-rays. Like I said, Scream Factory, Vinegar Syndrome, Synops Films,
I
like
stand
they
corrected.
they
I'm
put out
sorry.
they put out stuff all the time. So we need a nice crisp. Like I need a new
Get a
transfer of
crispy for
this movie.
TJ. Get a nice
Yeah.
crisp Blu-ray for
All
TJ.
right, we got less than a minute. So
Yeah. So
next week, right? We are
next week,
watching.
what?
What do we didn't we say what we were watching next
Oh,
week?
we were gonna do Watcher.
Yes, Watcher. I'm really excited to revisit that. I really enjoyed that movie as well. So Watcher, Shutter original Watcher.
It's a good one.
So anyway, that's the show, everybody.
Thanks
And
everybody for listening.
yeah, thank you
Um,
very much. Follow us on everything. We're on Instagram.
we're out there on all the
And
socials.
yeah, we're gonna be in your ears and up your butts. That's gonna be that's our slogan.